something that fits in with the topic at hand with about how not to make money in media and how to make money in media.
Mm-hmm.
Jake Paul and Mike Tyson are going to have a fight.
Well, I mean, does that fall under how to not make money?
Well, I think it also it falls on the weird state of our media marketplace. The fact that we have a former Disney kid who's turned into a fighting promoter, fighting a 57-year-old former world champion boxer,
Mm-hmm.
and that this is happening live on Netflix, which is a whole other level of this, which
Mm-hmm.
is Netflix is moving hard into live stuff.
Mm-hmm. So is HBO with sports.
Yeah. I mean, from what I understand, that's the plan with Max. Right now you can stream a version of CNN. Right now you can stream some sports properties. It'll be behind a bit of a further paywall in the future. At least that's the current version of that. But yeah, I mean, but with Tyson, do you want to see a 57-year-old fight a 27-year-old?
I mean, I would be curious as to how much he still got it. I mean, the dude was just terrifying for most of his. If I mean, just it was the one the Buster Douglas loss that kind of things unraveled. It seems from there, right? Do I have my timeline correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
I watched that live with my mom, by the way, not in the building, but on TV. And I remember Buster Douglas crying because his mom had just died weeks before that fight. Um, I mean, I personally don't find Jake Paul compelling in the slightest. I think he is the poster child for like sort of everything that's wrong with the current we're in, where we're all trying to get attention. And I just find him and his brother to be they get attention because they get attention. But I mean, kudos to him for putting him. I mean, that takes guts to do that. I don't care if he's 57. Mike Tyson is still Mike Tyson, and I'd be curious to see what kind of shape Mike Tyson is in. I have a feeling he's gonna kick Jake Paul's ass. That's my sense. But sportscasters, I quickly looked through what they were saying, and they think Mike Tyson's gonna get knocked out of the ring.
I don't think so. I'd be shocked if he was knocked out of the ring. I know he had a fight with another. I think it was with Roy Jones a couple years ago. Um, and it has been a couple of years, but he still looks mighty enough, and he waxed Roy Jones.
Okay, well,
I don't think he get knocked out of the ring. It might last longer than young Mike would have, because young Mike would have knocked that. He would knock the hell out of Jake Paul and landed him in 10 seconds. But I think it may be a lot like the I don't know if you watched any of the Francis Ngannou, Anthony Joshua, or heard anything about it. For those who don't know, Francis Ngannou was a UFC heavyweight champion. Has this amazing, compelling story. The man literally worked in a sand mine as a kid, ended up homeless in France, and cleaning buildings. And someone said, "Hey, you should try MMA." End up heavyweight champion of the world.
Wow.
Wow. He had a dispute over money with the UFC. He fought out his contract and went over to boxing, where you can make a lot more money in boxing because there's less rules. There's less of there are competing organizations that structure boxing instead of really a few smaller groups that control everything in the MMA. He knocked out a champion. I'm forgetting his name right now. A couple months ago, and then he faced Anthony Joshua, who knocked him the fuck out in two rounds last night.
Hmm. I was watching something that was streaming somewhere that I came across. There was some fight. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't watch MMA or UFC or boxing because I just don't feel adequate about how I've um uh, kept my own physical abilities. This- So watching people who are like really um so watching people who are really really super powerful physical specimens, it's not that I'm would even mind if someone was more someone's more powerful than me. It's just that I just don't take care of that aspect, and I feel like I should. And so I'm just like, nah, I can't watch this. It's not the same as like watching an awesome musician or even an athlete, like football player or whatever, doing something I can't do. Um, and there's just something about the rest of us sitting around on chairs watching these people be gladiators that I find really unsettling. But that's not what you're getting at. And what's really interesting to me is that Mike Tyson is the inverse media story or culture story as Jake Paul. Mike Tyson is popular now because he has substance, because he has a ton more substance than anybody would have even known, even maybe even himself. I don't even know. Right now, the guy sounds like fucking half one step away from Buddha in the way he
Yeah,
talks.
he's become a sage.
Right. And that's why so I love that. I'd still be nervous to be on his show and like and not make him angry. Like sometimes there's
Yeah.
moments where you're like, nah, like when Bill Maher was like, "Sure, let me talk," right? He's just like, "Oh, dude, don't trigger him."
Well, there was a moment, I believe it was on an airplane, where a guy did confront him for no reason,
Hmm.
and I believe I saw a video of this. It was terrifying.
Hmm. Yeah,
He-
don't. He's still
Mike
got whatever that is.
huge.
He's still got whatever that is. That whatever that trigger is. But a friend of mine said that he thought Mike Tyson was always sensitive and just didn't have a way to there's no outlet for that, and now he's finally so I find that to be, as much as we can complain about where things are going, dude, there's a lot of amazing stuff that's rising to the top, and Mike Tyson's a perfect example. I don't know that any of the sportscasters I listened to said he was going to get knocked out of the ring. I might have misspoken there, but there was this reaction like oh, does he need the money? Does he, is it this like somehow he's lowering himself to this? And I have a feeling he's going to hold his own more than well.
Well, a couple years ago, and I believe this may be where this fight, other than the money grubbing, of course, comes from. Mike Tyson was on a podcast, and he was asked, "Could you fuck up Jake Paul?" And what do you think Mike Tyson said?
Of course.
He said, "So fucking easy."
Mm, okay. How do we know that wasn't orchestrated to pave the way for this?
It's a 2 year stretch. Maybe it was, but it was 2 years ago. That's a lot of premeditation if that was set up.
Mm,
That could Mike want or need the money? Sure. Jake Paul obviously wants the money, but I don't think Mike would do this just for money.
yeah, I
Um,
have no idea. I mean, I have, you got to wonder when people they get to the top of the mountain in their whatever it is, they're just as curious to show that they still got it too. I think, it's like a challenge. Like,
So fucking easy.
Jake Paul is obviously
he's beautiful. My family loves Jake Paul.
Could you fuck him up?
Oh, I'm so fucking easy.
Jake Paul is obviously, big.
Obviously, very, very edited there. But yes, that's the genesis of this all.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason it's compelling is because it's Mike Tyson. I just find the Paul brothers there's nothing there for me. It's like the crass pursuit of fame and attention without anything guiding it. And good for them, I guess. But so I see this as a collision of substance versus fluff.
Interesting. Substance versus fluff.
Yeah.
I don't see it that way at all. I think that the fact that they've been able to create the business that they've been able to do is incredibly impressive. Both in different lanes. I believe Logan is wrestling and Jake is boxing. And they both have weird crypto scams and I believe a energy drink in their empire as well. As long as
one of them does, I think.
One of them, I don't know.
I don't remember because I saw them arguing about. Yeah, even that was uninteresting when they were arguing on one of their like one of their endorsements. One of them didn't want the one of their sponsors didn't want the other one to represent a rival energy drink at the other one's event and whatever.
But I find the fact that they've taken advantage of a very disjointed on falling apart media space and have created a business around their personalities and around them taking massive risks. Wrestling and obviously boxing is a whole other level than wrestling.
Yeah, but they're doing it in a way that is like a sideshow of all of those things. Like at least people always sort of put an asterisk. It seems like it's like, well, is he really a boxer? Yes, he's boxing.
Yeah,
but it's
not a pure art approach to it,
right?
But it never is. It wasn't for Mike Tyson. I mean, part of the appeal of Tyson was the sideshow that he put on. The fact that he knocked guys out incredibly fast. The fact that he was such a weird guy, that he talked a little strange.
But he did legitimately go through, like, come up the boxing ranks. He wasn't like a personality first.
So what would you expect of someone like Jake Paul to start from the absolute bottom?
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, it's kind of, it's kind of the argument that you get about podcasters versus radio, where it's like, hey, I think of this argument that Howard Stern made a few years ago about Ari Shaffir, where he said that, hey, Ari didn't go to a small market, make his bones, and climb up. He's just on a podcast. Well, we're in an environment where the world is flipped on its side, where media companies aren't making money like they used to, where it's just, hey, would someone just give me a Saturday afternoon show to have a conversation like this? Probably not like this. And this obviously didn't exist in this way 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 40 years ago when we talk about Tyson and Howard Stern. So, but now that it does exist, now that you can just say, hey, I want to have my own pay-per-view and I'm going to set up with somebody to fight. And I think he fought a couple former NBA players first. I think Nate Robinson was one of them. Then he fought MMA fighters. And you could do that today. You couldn't do that yesterday.
I think your comparison, the analogy between podcasts and radio is certainly fair. I wouldn't make it, and the distinction is podcasting is it's a legitimately its own art form, and it does evolve out of the previous. It does. It's like a mutation of radio broadcasting. It involves some of the same elements. Um, this is more people getting pulled, athletes and entire sports being pulled into the centrifugal force or the gravitational force of attention seeking for its own sake. Simply because someone has succeeded at that, then they can start pulling these legitimate figures in athletics towards them. And I find that gross. Like, yeah, I guess you can say the Floyd Mayweather, what's that fucking Irish, Conor
Conor
McGregor.
McGregor.
I guess that is a similar thing.
And variations of that have happened throughout history. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali fought a wrestler. Like
Okay.
you go back further and further back, you find this over and over again.
I mean, it reminds me of was it Wilt Chamberlain who was in martial arts movies or one of them against Bruce Lee? Who was it? Which
Not sure about that one.
I don't remember who it was. There was an NBA player who like suddenly showed
Could be
up in one
Kareem
of those.
Abdul-Jabbar.
Maybe, yes.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, yeah. And I just remember thinking, even as a kid, that there was something hokey and ridiculous about that. I don't like the idea of like legit sports all being turned into the WWE. And that Jake Paul seems to be an agent of turning everything into that. like that's what his he's sort of sprinkling P.T. Barnum dust on everything.
No, I don't disagree, but I do think you're missing something.
Yeah, interest.
Well, not just that.
No, I know. You think there's something I'm not seeing
Yeah,
properly. Yeah, yeah.
I think it was already going that way. And I think this ties into one of these things that we were planning to go into later. In that, as media erodes, as the financial model of media erodes, and it moves from a more secure indirect model, meaning think things like broadcast television, cable television, newspaper ads, as we have as those things bear fewer fruit, we move to subscription models and one-off payments. The attention economy has taken over, and it took over long before Jake Paul. He's only an island in the stream. Like,
You're saying he's a symptom, not the.
Absolutely,
he's the proverbial symptom, not the disease.
Without a doubt. He's a reflection of the times and the environment, not a person who is a revolutionary.
I just find there's something about his whole vibe that I find off-putting.
I agree with that. I find it off-putting. I find his own vibe. I think both Paul brothers I find off-putting. I think they're not great for humanity.
Right. They're not even great for entertainment or the attention economy. Right?
But I also think that they are simply taking advantage of their time.
Right. And see where you would say, well, listen, they're killing it. So we've got to acknowledge, for better or worse, they're here. I hesitate to give them attention. Now, Mike Tyson being there, I'm going to watch. I'll be curious what happens. And also, I'm waiting for Jake Paul's luck to run out. He's clearly very fit, obviously, right? But I mean, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, he hasn't spent a life in a discipline of any of these.
I think there was some amateur boxing.
But it's not the life
It was.
discipline that's required of a boxer, correct?
I would agree. I would agree with that. And if he was facing a boxer in his prime, much like Francis Ngannou, I think he would get his ass kicked.
Okay, so there is something. It's like, when is this guy's luck? When is somebody going to pull this guy's card and really either humiliate or hurt him?
Hence why Mike was asked what he was asked. And I think whether it's MMA fighter after MMA fighter and boxer after boxer, athlete after athlete have been asked similar questions because he's embarrassed guy after guy. And he shocked me in a lot of this. I expected. I think he fought Tyron Woodley, who's another world champion UFC fighter who was known as a striker, but striking in UFC is a lot different than striking in boxing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So,
or Steve Kim when we need him, right?
yeah. Shout out to Steve Kim. Yeah, Steve Kim's the best. I'd love to have one of these conversations with Steve Kim. We should invite him on. He might do it. Steve Kim would illustrate this better than either of us could. If you are, and this is where you're absolutely correct. He doesn't have a dedicated discipline. And there's I was trying to think of, I just saw a quote earlier today, I think that fits this. Give me one moment.
Sure.
It was about the Joshua Ngannou fight last night. It's from Robin Black, and I'll put it up on the screen real quick. For those who don't know, we're going live on YouTube. Okay, let me. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that, Savvy. Can you read that?
Yes, I can. I can.
Okay. Joshua displayed the awesome power of a lifetime of skill development. True mastery is not so much a goal as it is simply a consequence of a lifelong commitment to the process. And I think that's what you were saying.
Well, I mean, for some people, that's what it is, right? And then there are people who are just innately gifted who don't have to. But there's something insulting to these sports that every time Jake Paul circles around and pulls somebody, and I wonder how many legit fighters would be like, well, I'm beneath doing that because he's not a real whatever. I mean, I'm sure they want the money because he's an attraction.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's what's attracted the retired NBA player and the MMA fighter, because retired NBA player are no longer making a big check.
Of course.
And the MMA fighter, I mean, Francis Ngannou was heavyweight champion of the world. Do you know what his last win he made in the UFC?
What are we talking? At least 7 years? I have no idea. I'm just guessing.
He made $500,000.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I believe last night he made something like $7 million.
Sure. And so he doesn't mind. I mean, of course. And then to channel my inner Jason Whitlock, former NBA players, got baby mamas, living a lifestyle, like, that kind of thing. And yeah, this is, you're right. We're wrong to decry the corrupting influence of this as if it's anything new. I mean, broadsheet newspapers back in the 1800s were worse than clickbait, or just as bad, right? Is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
My
bad. I shortchanged Francis. He made 20 million minimum.
This time. Yeah.
Via Forbes, that's their estimate. And it's Forbes, so you have to take it with some salt. But that sounds about right. Joshua is a gigantic pay-per-view draw.
First of all, what stage of the fight was this?
This was in the second round.
Oh my
And for those who are
god!
not watching the video, we're watching repeatedly Anthony Joshua knock Francis Ngannou the fuck out.
But I mean, Francis Ngannou could do that to like what percentage of the human population, male population?
99.99999999999. He
And
just ran
also,
0.0000001.
right, and also, the only reason he's suffered that fate is because he's not in his prime, as you're saying.
Well, no, it's not that he's not in his prime. He's not a trained boxer.
Oh, okay, yes, of course. Okay, so I mean, this is like I don't know, taking NFL players and putting them on a rugby pitch.
Yeah, like and the inverse happens. Well, rugby players have come and played in the NFL. Few have made teams.
Sure,
no one's become a star.
They're usually special teams guys, right? Or are they
teamers have happened? There was a guy who kicked a field goal to win the game for the Texans this year. The Bills had a guy named Christian Wade a few years ago who returned a few touchdowns in the preseason. He looked good, but he wasn't fluent on the intricacies of the game. He was it was something that he was trying to pick up at 28. So it's one of the things that's happening with sports. If you pick it up early, you put Francis Ngannou, if you had him boxing at 18.
Right. Where would he be versus this guy? You know what I'm saying?
I think it would be a competitive fight. Joshua has been boxing since he was a child.
Right. So what, I mean, and I understand the money. I feel like I wouldn't fault, and I wish there were a boxer that would say, I'm not going to do that because it kind of sullies my craft to, and of course it's naive to think, I bet you there are though star boxers that are like, nah, I don't want to be doing shit like that. Now you waive that money, who's going to say no?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, the money is really, really good. Joshua made something like 50 million last night.
Say if the money were comparable though, right? Say if they had, it's like, well, I could make that same money in a legit fight. I bet you a lot of these dudes would be like, nah, fuck this.
Yeah, but it's to circle back around. It's a sideshow